The first time the wolf growled, Dr. Yilzax froze mid-step, two of his upper limbs clutching a bioscanner while the third trembled near the creature's flank. The fourth limb instinctively slapped the emergency alert on the wall behind him, bathing the sterile medbay in a pulsing red glow. The wolf's deep rumble echoed through the chamber like low thunder in a canyon. "He's just a loyal pup," said a calm voice from the doorway. Dr. Yilzax turned all four eyes toward the human. He had met many species in his time as a xenoveterinarian aboard the interspecies medical vessel Siltora, but none were as consistently baffling as the humans. This one, tall and broad-shouldered, looked like he'd just crawled out of a dust storm. His name was Hank Burrows, and he was grinning like a fool beside the open doorway, one arm in a sling and a jagged scratch across his temple. "You brought a Class 4 terrestrial predator into a sterile diagnostics chamber," Yilzax said, voice tight with filtered restraint. "And it growled." "At me? He's only upset because you touched the rib he cracked last week," Hank said, stepping in. "Let me calm him." Yilzax stepped back as Hank approached the wolf. The creature's fur was a mix of dark grays and silvers, matted in places, with a set of intelligent yellow eyes locked on the alien vet. Its tail, though still, flicked once as Hank knelt beside it. "Easy, Buck," Hank murmured, running a hand through the thick fur behind the beast's ears. "He's just trying to help. Chill, bud." The wolf exhaled and lowered its head onto the med table. "See," Hank said with a sideways glance. "Told you, loyal pup." Yilzax blinked once in disbelief, then twice for protocol. "That pup is nearly 100 kilograms and possesses a bite force capable of shattering medical composite alloys." "Yeah, but he only bites people who deserve it," Hank said, standing up with a wince. "We were out on the South Ridge. Got ambushed by those spindly things, what do you call them?" "Lyrics," Yilzax muttered. "Right them. Buck took one down with a lunge, saved my hide." Yilzax frowned. "Lyrics hunt in packs, you should not have been in that region." "Well, I wasn't planning on a picnic." "We were tracking a distress signal. Turned out to be a busted drone." Hank paused. "Buck got scraped up in the fight. He hasn't been eating." Yilzax turned back to the diagnostics console. The bioscanner displayed a skeletal image of the wolf's ribcage with 3 fractured ribs and several deep tissue contusions. "The injuries are serious. These are not minor abrasions. You should have brought him in sooner." "We were 2 days out on foot. I carried Buck most of the way back." "My arm's a mess from it." Yilzax stared at him. "You carried a 100-kilogram animal for 2 days while injured." Hank shrugged with his good shoulder. "He's family." Silence lingered as Yilzax recalibrated the pain-suppressant dosage for a non-humanoid mammal. The injector hissed softly and Buck flinched but didn't growl this time. "You're lucky he didn't puncture a lung," Yilzax said. "Yeah, luck and stubbornness. He's tougher than he looks." Yilzax raised a narrow brow. "So are you, but idiocy often presents as resilience." Hank grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment." The wolf's breathing steadied under the sedation. Yilzax adjusted the vitals monitor and walked to the side console, prepping equipment for tissue regeneration. "This will take time," he said, "and I will require your assistance." "He only tolerates you." "Of course," Hank said. "I'll stay." 3 hours later, the med bay was dimmed, the hum of machines steady as Yilzax applied the final layer of dermal sealant to Buck's flank. Hank sat in the corner, arm still in the sling, watching with tired eyes. "You should rest," Yilzax said, not looking up. "I will, just needed to make sure Buck's okay. He will recover. Provided no further ambushes occur, not planning on any, but plans don't always mean much out here." Yilzax wiped his instruments clean. "Your species continues to confuse me. Join the club. No other sentient brings wild predators into medical facilities. He's not wild, he's just not domesticated in the usual way." "That is a contradiction. So is Buck. He doesn't care about rules." "He cares about people." Yilzax turned to face Hank. "He growled at me and didn't bite you. That's restraint." The next morning, Hank returned with a limp and fresh bruises. The cargo ramp failed, he explained, limping into the medbay. Buck's up and moving already, tried to follow me. Slipped and hit his side again. Yilzax's eyes widened. He refractured the ribs. Maybe he's not whining, but he's favoring that side again. Yilzax grabbed the scanner. Where is he? Waiting outside. I didn't want another growling session. This time, Buck entered without protest, tail low but eyes alert. Yilzax scanned him quickly. One rib has shifted. We'll need to immobilize the area. Can I help? Hank asked. Yes, hold his head. Talk to him. As the vet applied a compression brace, Buck shuddered once but didn't protest. Hank murmured softly, keeping the wolf calm. Yilzax leaned back when it was done. He listens to you, that's rare. Hank scratched behind Buck's ears. He trusts me. That too is rare. The following days were a blur of recovery. Hank showed up daily, despite his own injuries. His arm cast was upgraded after a routine scan revealed a hairline fracture missed earlier. He grumbled but complied. By the end of the week, Buck was eating again, tail wagging in small arcs. Yilzax found himself less tense around the creature, though he never touched him directly. One afternoon, Yilzax watched as Hank tossed a synthetic bone across the medical bay. Buck bounded after it, limping slightly but clearly improving. The vet shook his head. I still do not understand. What? How your species formed such a bond with a predator, one that should have seen you as food. Hank leaned against the console. We didn't tame wolves by force. We earned their trust, took generations. And now we've got dogs, but Buck's not a dog. He's something in between, still got the wild in him, but he chose me. That implies understanding. He has it, not in words, but he knows loyalty, he knows love. Yilzax observed the wolf. If others saw him, they would not believe he was safe. Most people don't see past the teeth. Same with humans sometimes. Yilzax paused. Perhaps we're all guilty of that. As Buck healed, Yilzax began recording his progress in a separate file. There was something unique in the way the animal responded to Hank, something worth studying. Not for science, perhaps, but for understanding. 2 weeks later, Buck was cleared for full activity. Hank showed up that morning with his arm finally out of the cast, still stiff but usable. You did good, Doc, Hank said. I treated the injuries, you did the rest. Nah, we both did our part, he looked at Buck. Ready to run, bud, Buck barked once, tail thumping. Yilzax watched them walk out of the medbay together. He didn't say goodbye, he knew they would be back eventually. Not because of injury, though that was likely, but because some bonds were too strange to ignore. A human and a wolf, wandering the stars together. As the door closed behind them, Yilzax turned back to his notes, pausing only once to write a title on the new entry. Case Study Terrestrial Canine. Loyal Pup. The containment wing of the Siltora's bio-isolation bay wasn't meant for mammals with fur, teeth, or opinions. It was designed for quarantining spore-borne parasites, vapor-blooded crustaceans, or the occasional sentient mold colony. Nevertheless, Buck was sprawled across the diagnostic cot, panting lightly, tail flicking once every few seconds. Dr. Yilzax stood at the console, oscillating between bafflement and professional concern. The screen displayed a full-body biometric sweep of the wolf, highlighting an unfamiliar cluster of cells just beneath the dermal layer on Buck's left rear haunch. "You're certain it wasn't there before?" he asked without looking away from the readout. "Positive," said Hank, who was perched on a stool, chin resting in his palm. "I clean him every night. That lump popped up yesterday. He's not acting like it hurts, but it's off." Yilzax tapped the console to zoom in on the cluster. The mass was irregular in shape, not fluid-filled, and showed no signs of inflammation. It wasn't infection, but it wasn't native tissue either. "Could be a parasitic node," Yilzax muttered. "Could be," Hank replied. "But I pulled 2 tick-like things off him last week, and they weren't fancy, just old-fashioned bloodsuckers. This feels different, more structured." Buck made a low chuffing sound, eyes flicking between the two of them. "I'll need to extract a sample," Yilzax said. "No sedation. He's metabolically unstable when under suppressants." Hank stood, brushing his palms together. You want me to keep his head steady? That would be preferable. He retrieved a sterile probe with a flexible tip and approached the wolf. Buck held still, though his ears twitched when the device made contact. Yilzax guided the probe into the dermal fold, watched the live feed on the monitor, and paused. The lump wasn't just structured, it had angles, symmetry. A tiny embedded object. That's not organic, he said. Didn't think so. Hank crouched beside Buck, running a hand down his side. Could he have picked up shrapnel? Not without external trauma. There's no entry wound. Then what is it? Yilzax extracted the object and dropped it into a containment vial. It was metallic, no larger than a fingernail, with a faint iridescent sheen, definitely not from Earth. I'll run it through the nano-analyzer. Stay here. As he walked toward the lab chamber, he heard Hank say, "Don't worry, Buck. You've probably just been tagged by some alien realtor trying to sell your territory." The lab door sealed behind him. Yilzax inserted the vial into the analyzer, fingers tapping the input screen rapidly. He expected a low-confidence match, maybe some trace element data at best. What he got instead was a data signature. The device lit up and pinged with a match from the Siltora's intelligence database. "Tracking implant," Yilzax muttered. "Origin, Kreltari Coalition. Directive, passive surveillance of Class B predators for behavioral study." He blinked. Then blinked again. Why would the Kreltari tag a wolf? He returned to the medbay with the vial in hand. "It's a surveillance implant," he said. "Kreltari, not invasive, but it's been transmitting behavioral data for at least 8 days. Spying on Buck." Hank raised an eyebrow. "What for?" "Unknown. The coalition doesn't share research directives with civilians." Hank rubbed his jaw. "They tag wild things to study them, but Buck isn't wild, not really. They likely didn't know that." "They must have encountered him during your last expedition." "South Ridge," Hank said slowly. "The Lyric ambush. Maybe someone watched from a distance. Possible. But it's illegal to implant foreign devices in registered shipboard fauna." Hank's expression darkened. "So they broke protocol?" "Yes, and likely assumed no one would notice." Buck let out a long sigh and rolled onto his side, completely unconcerned. "I want it logged," Hank said. "Officially, you've got time-stamped scans. Make a report." Yilzax tilted his head. "You're not angry." "Oh, I'm furious. But I'm also realistic. If I stomp into a Kreltari consulate shouting about my wolf being microchipped, they'll smile, apologize, and keep doing it to the next animal they find. This needs to go through the right channels." Yilzax nodded. "I'll send it to the Interspecies Ethics Board." "Good. And scan me too." Yilzax blinked. "Pardon, you heard me. I want a full-body scan. If they tagged Buck, they might have tagged me." Yilzax hesitated, then gestured to the adjacent diagnostics chair. Hank sat down, rolled up his sleeves, and let the scanner arm sweep over him. Results came in less than a minute. No implants, no foreign objects, just a recent collarbone fracture still stabilizing and residual inflammation in the shoulder joint. "Nothing," Yilzax said. "You're clean." "Well, that's something." Hank stood with a grunt. "At least they still draw a line between man and beast." Yilzax looked at the vial again. "Why tag your companion and not you?" "Because Buck doesn't lie. He doesn't hide intentions or play politics." "Maybe they thought he'd tell a clearer story." "That is oddly logical." They stayed in the lab longer than either expected. Yilzax arranged for the implant to be sent to the ethics board, filing a formal incident log without embellishment. Hank helped himself to one of the nutrient gels from the side cabinet, chewing with visible disappointment. "You people ever heard of flavor?" Nutrition over taste is a common preference among long-lived species. "I'd rather die young and happy." Yilzax didn't respond to that. By the third day, Buck was back to full mobility. The implant site healed rapidly with regenerative gel, but something lingered in the air between them, an unspoken shift. "You ever have a patient that changed the way you look at things?" Hank asked while tightening Buck's travel harness. Yilzax glanced up from his console. "Yes, A juvenile Relian once formed a bond with a carnivorous plant. They communicated through pheromones and shared dietary preferences. It nearly disrupted a local ecosystem. Did you stop them? No. I gave them a containment habitat and told them to keep it on a leash. Hank laughed. Sounds about right. He clipped the last strap on Buck's harness, then stood. We're shipping out tomorrow. Mining team needs a guide through the southern pass. I'll log our route. I recommend avoiding the ridge entirely. Don't worry, I'm not in the mood for more surprises. Yilzax approached Buck and crouched, slowly extending a hand. Buck sniffed his fingers, then gently pressed his nose against them. I will never understand your kind, Yilzax said. Which one of us? Both. That night, long after the medbay lights dimmed and the corridor foot traffic faded, Yilzax sat alone, reviewing the surveillance implant's data. It recorded everything: movement, ambient sounds, even emotional stress markers. At timestamp 72 hours and 16 minutes, the implant captured a short sequence. Buck standing over a prone Hank, heart rate elevated, teeth bared as 3 lyrics circled from the ridge. Then a burst of motion. The implant's biostats spiked. The lyrics fled. Yilzax watched the loop twice. Then he switched it off. He stared at the blank screen, the silence thick around him. Perhaps intelligence wasn't always in the hands that built ships and wrote treaties. Sometimes it sat quietly at someone's feet, watching the stars with teeth hidden behind calm eyes. The Siltora's environmental systems were set to a comfortable neutral for most species, but Dr. Yilzax still found the medbay too dry. He adjusted the humidity levels by 2% before shifting his attention back to the diagnostic table, where Buck lay with a bandaged paw and an expression that could only be described as annoyed. Stop licking it, Yilzax said. Buck licked it again. Across the room, Hank was perched on a folding stool that looked about 5 kilograms from collapse, shaking out a packet of something brown and flaky into a tin dish. Dehydrated liver slices, he said. Supposed to be a treat. Buck thinks it's punishment. He's correct, Yilzax replied. That is not food. That is a desiccated internal organ. Buck sniffed the dish, looked at Hank, and thumped his tail twice without taking a bite. He stepped on a shard of glass. Hank explained. We were helping the excavation crew on Deck 6. Someone didn't secure their cutting tools. It embedded nearly 1 centimeter into the paw pad, Yilzax said. You are fortunate it missed the tendons. I flushed it and wrapped it, but figured you'd want to look. I always do, Yilzax said. He replaced the bandage with a flexible biofilm and sealed it with a microcurrent. He may limp slightly for 2 days, no running. You hear that, bud? Hank leaned forward. No chasing the sanitation drones. Buck blinked once. Yilzax stepped back, arms crossed. You continue to treat him like a crew member. Well, he pulls his weight, more than some of the actual crew. That is not a compliment we share publicly. It's not public, it's just you, me, and Buck, Yilzax sighed. You have a strange hierarchy, not strange, just different. Back home, dogs had jobs. Herding, guarding, search and rescue. Buck's not much different. He just works off script. There was a soft knock at the medbay entrance. The door parted to reveal Lieutenant Narzeth, a Lauren engineer with a neck like a coiled spring and skin that shifted colors in the corners depending on mood. Today, it was a mottled blend of green and plum, mild embarrassment. I was told to report here, Narzeth said, stepping inside with a datapad clutched to their chest. You're the one who left the cutting module unsecured, Hank said. I didn't realize it slid off the bench, Narzeth replied, eyes on the floor. We weren't expecting anyone to bring a terrestrial quadruped through the maintenance corridor. It's a ship. People walk through. He's not people, Narzeth said. He's crew, Hank said, standing, and crew deserves safe passage. Yilzax stepped between them, antennae tilting slightly. Enough, the injury is minor. The responsibility has been acknowledged. Lieutenant, you'll file a hazard report and update the corridor protocols. Yes, Doctor. Narzeth turned to leave but hesitated. He really understands you, Hank looked at Buck. Try him. Narseth knelt awkwardly, holding out a hand. "Sit." Buck tilted his head, then sneezed. "He doesn't take orders from strangers," Hank said. "Earn it first." Narseth flushed a deeper plum and left without another word. Yilzax moved toward the sink to sterilize his tools. "You antagonize easily. I don't like people treating him like baggage. He is not a person. He's better than most." Yilzax didn't argue. The last time they debated the definition of personhood, it had ended with 3 hours of silence and a broken mug. Instead, he asked, "What are your plans now that he's injured?" "Rest. Buck's off his feet for a couple days, so we'll stay in quarters. I've got reports to finish anyway." "Uninterrupted rest is critical," Yilzax said, sealing the sterilization chamber. "He should avoid stress. I'll keep it quiet, lights low, no visitors." "Good. I will check in tomorrow morning." As Hank turned to leave, Buck hesitated at the door, then trotted back and nudged Yilzax's leg gently with his nose. Yilzax froze. "Did he just—" he began. "He said thanks," Hank said, already halfway down the corridor. The next morning arrived with a ship-wide alert. 2 cargo haulers from the mining outpost had docked early due to a navigational glitch. The Siltora's corridors were suddenly packed with flustered technicians and sweating engineers. Hank's quarters were directly beneath the docking ring, and the rumble of arriving vessels had startled Buck into a low, continuous growl. "He hasn't stopped pacing," Hank said, appearing in the medbay with Buck in tow. "I tried music. I tried food. He's on edge." Yilzax scanned the wolf again. "No physical regression. The wound is healing, but his cortisol is elevated. He's stressed. He doesn't like the noise." "Neither do I. We need somewhere quiet." Yilzax considered. "The botanical chamber is sealed off for fumigation. Too many chemicals. The cryo archive is silent. Too cold. The hydroponics bay is dark during filtration cycle. Perfect." Yilzax keyed into the Siltora's scheduling grid and cleared a 2-hour window. 10 minutes later, Buck was curled in a bed of synthetic moss between rows of oxygenating algae trays, eyes half closed. The filtered light cast pale green patterns on the walls. Yilzax stood nearby, arms folded. "He's responding well." Hank sat cross-legged on the floor, back against the support strut. "He's always liked green spaces, even when we were posted on that asteroid with the fake garden dome." "Why? No idea. Maybe it smells like Earth." Yilzax watched Buck shift gently in his sleep. "He dreams." "Yeah," Hank said. "He remembers." Later, as the filtration cycle ended, they returned to the medbay. Buck's limp was almost gone. Yilzax applied a final scan and deactivated the biofilm. "He's cleared for full activity. He'll be glad to hear it." "No more injuries," Yilzax said. "Please, I'll do my best." Yilzax paused. "You know, I had a colleague once. She worked exclusively with nonverbal sentients, claimed they communicated more clearly than anyone else." "Seems right," Hank said. "Buck never lies." "I envy that." They stood in silence for a moment. Finally, Yilzax said, "He's not just loyal, he's deliberate, intentional. That's rare." "Yeah," Hank said. "He chose me." Yilzax nodded, "And I suppose I've chosen him, in a way." "You're part of the pack now," Hank grinned. "That is not how I would describe it." Buck let out a soft huff and rested his head on Hank's boot. Yilzax deactivated the console, cleared the scan logs, and returned his tools to the drawer. No alarms. No growls. No conflict. Just a wolf, a human, and an alien in quiet agreement. "Balance at last,"